Okay, we're talking about the T-SQL enhancement, and I asked you the question: what are the enhancements that this T-SQL present in terms of security, usually in terms of security, in terms of information assurance, and so on? The good behavior, the good process that the projects can present or manifest towards the service delivery is one of the most important concerns whenever we talk about an enhancement. Triggers are functionalities enhanced by the T-SQL, Transact SQL. We are seeing actually, we saw what is the definition of a trigger. We know what is a trigger mainly, and we are aware of what are the triggers and what they can be actually when we talk about running projects. They are events and they are event handlers, and they are not event handlers, but they are event firers that they call actually a launch of an event due to a specific actually constraints. Mainly we talk about the time and constraint. At a given time, an event would be launched automatically. This is the effect of a trigger. So, as per an example, we are going to see the example of triggers, but managing DML statements or queries, data manipulation language. DML actually, as per the definition, they are the queries responsible for manipulating the entities and the data inside the end from within the entities, not the creation. Create here, this create here is a query, yes, it's a SQL query, yes, but it is not a DML, this is a DDL. The create. We are creating a table. We are creating here another table. We saw that we saw this actually in the last lab. This is exactly what we saw the last lab. Those are DDL. Those are actually for our use now for the explanation only, but they are not DML. Great. So the triggers. Syntax simply like we are creating actually a stored procedure. We are going to create a trigger. Here it is. We are going to create a trigger here. Actually, it would be having the name which is user defined. Specifically, as per this example we are discussing now, we are having an example of inserting values. As per an example, we are discussing the syntax, the lexic, how it looks like. So create trigger as a keyword. The name, the user defined name here, the user defined name. This is the user defined. I'm gonna change the color of this one, and the user defined name here to be yes, this trigger itself, not the username. This trigger would be running on an entity, would be running on an entity. Here is the entity, the locations. What is this location? Is the table we created earlier. Is the table we created. And we have a table inside our database. And this table is controlled by a trigger. An event would be launched if something happens or actually on top of an entity inside the database. That's it. This trigger, which is here given this name TRUPD locations, which is a shortcut of trigger update locations. It's a name. Like I write Oman, like I write Nizwa, like I write University of Nizwa, like I write Sultanate of Oman, any name, it's user defined. But to indicate what the trigger would do, it is actually meaningful, no more, no less. This trigger on an entity, yes, but what it would do, it would control an event. The event here is the update. The event here is the update. The update here, every activity that would try to update any value from within this entity would be controlled immediately. Immediately, the block here would be launched. The constraint here is that we are not making update replications, means we are not making 2 times. This is actually statement to say, but we can avoid. But here mainly any update will cause this block from the beginning till the end will be launched. Any modification of values, not the columns, the fields, not the architecture of the entity. No, the values inside. The values inside means if we try to make any update inside of these locations here, this block will be, let's say, executed. What is this block? It's an insert of a value into the location hist. What is the location hist? It's another table. We have it inside the database. It's another table. We have it inside the database. Okay, let me summarize. Okay, we have a database, whatever the database name is, and we are going to control the events from within the entities inside the database. We have two entities. They are locations and location hist. Entities means tables. Mr. Machine, I thought. Hey, check your device here. Actually, check your device, Nihad. Are you able to hear me? Jahina, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, Mister.
Yeah. So Nihad tried to restart, or I don't know actually. طلعت دخلت كم مرة بعدها ماشي فايدة ولا أشوف شيء منتشرة في شاشة سوداء. Change the device actually. I believe that this is an issue from the Meet. I don't know if it is from the here from the university campus controls, but or from the Google itself. Change change the device, Nihad. Use the mobile. Maybe it will solve the issue. Okay. Entities, they are tables in our concern here. They are the tables. So every activity in our concern now, in our example now, that um, uh, it is an update on this entity here, we will track that. So a trigger will be generated. Here it is inside the database, inside the entity itself, because we are making it on top of an entity, so we find it inside the entity itself. It is not outside. See here, no more, no less. Yeah. Any questions, please? Any concern in this regard? Does it make you remember anything? Actually, this concern, the creation of the trigger.
No, Mister.
That's great. So that's great. That's good. We continue. Okay. What we would do, see here actually, if we're going to try to make any written instead of trigger, regardless. So here, an execution. It's the same thing actually. It's another trigger. It's not the same one. The output, because here it's not the output of this trigger. This is another trigger. But here we are not making an insert. We're making just a display of a message. We are displaying a message, no more, no less. So again, we are making a control of an event on an entity. The same entity is the same location. Let me change the color. The same entity, but here it's a create. It's a trigger. I'm gonna maximize the size for you. Good. if something happens here, we are talking about a delete. So instead of delete, we are not making for. There is no for delete here. There is no for here. We are not typing for. See, for the update, we are using for updates. Here, no, we are replacing. We are making an instead of the delete. This block would be executed the begin end. Here we are making a simple display message. Instead of the delete, see here, delete from locations where location ID is 1. Here, no, it has displayed this message. Sample instead of trigger, sample instead, which is this one. As message, the message here is the header. We saw that in lab message. So sample instead of trigger. Any questions here, please? Try to. It is simple to understand, no more or less. So let's continue. The very famous aggregates, actually, it's another concern. It's another topic. We finished about the triggers. Let's talk about the aggregates and the use of the aggregates to go across these statements and the SQL queries. What we are going to see here is the use of different types of aggregates. But what is our concern here is just the functionalities that the numerical processes that we can do on top of a query, inside the query itself. The aggregates, they are actually recognized by us, like the example we see here: the count, the sum, the average, the max, the mean, and so on. All of them, they are aggregates that we can pass to a query in the query body itself. In addition to that, the T-SQL allows us to pass user-defined aggregates, means math functions that the user defines. Yes, so we can create a math function that the user implements using the T-SQL technology and passes the name of this user-defined aggregate to the body of the queries inside the program, inside the project. What does mean user-defined? Means the aggregates here actually, let's take the example of the sum. What does the sum do? It makes a sum of two numbers. From where we got this sum, it is pre-recognized by the engine. You just type sum, he will know what is the sum, and he will give you the sum. Yes, the sum and value. Predefined. It's a built-in aggregate. But can we write, for example, an example of, I give an example, it's user-defined. It has to be user-defined. I can say search num, or search numbers in plural, less. We are going to search two numbers, number 1, number 2. There is no aggregate, user predefined, built in, that searches two numbers. No. So we can create, the user can create using the T-SQL, T-SQL can create an aggregate, which is a method or a function that searches two numbers and returns them, and he passes the name of these search numbers anytime he needs inside the query, wherever he needs, and this would be user-defined aggregate. Is it clear? Any questions in this point exactly? So I'm going to write something here. I'm going to just to make you understand what I'm just saying here. Let me maximize the font. See, I'm going to say select search NBRs, let's say X, Y here, comma, name, comma, let's say major, it's enough. From students. Okay, that's it, semicolon, it's enough. So see here, this is a statement, this is a query, this is a query, this is a query. Okay, we are searching for three fields. The first one search number or numbers. The second one name. The third one major. From an entity named students. That was the problem. The problem is that what is the search numbers as a method? We have the parentheses here. Parenthesis. So this is a function that has to have a result, an output. Otherwise, it's a problem. From where we got this? From where? It can be a user-defined. It can be user-defined method which is to be utilized as an aggregate, like we type, for example, I'm going to say max. After instead of name, I'm going to say max GPA. What is this max? The max is predefined. It's a built-in aggregate. So this max would return the max of the GPA. The list of the GPAs inside the list of the GPAs. The list, the maximum amongst those GPAs would be returned here. And these search numbers, I'm using two parameters, parameter number one X and parameter number two Y. Whatever they are numbers, actually we have to define them. We have to initialize them. We are going to search those two numbers using the method of the aggregate search numbers. What does these search numbers mean or represent? It represents a user-defined. Let me use the same color. It represents the user-defined method or aggregate. We use the word aggregate that does a process in the body of the query. We are calling it because it has to be already defined by the user. Yes, validate. But this is actually specifically for the Microsoft products. It is enhanced by the T-SQL only. So if we write this query inside the Microsoft Access, it might cause a problem. If we write this statement in an Oracle platform, it might cause a problem. And in any other database management system, it might cause a problem. It is related to Microsoft and specifically SQL Server. Because Microsoft Access, also it's a Microsoft product, but it does not enhance the T-SQL. It is not like the SQL Server. Any questions, please?
No.
Okay, great. So in this level here, I might ask you, what are the differences in between the SQL Server, here we are insisting on SQL Server 2012, and the Microsoft Access 2016, let's say. SQL Server 2012 enhances the user-defined aggregates. Microsoft Access 2016 does not enhance the user-defined aggregates. What are the differences? The difference is actually because actually SQL Server and the Microsoft Access, they are two different DBMSs, database management systems, and completely they are running on two different architectures. The SQL Server is a professional DB in the sense of it 100% enhances the relational perspective, but the SQL, the Microsoft Access does not. Actually, it is a file-based database management system that does not enhance the, let's say, relational views, but it works with that, but it is based on the use of files, so something like that. So thus it is not designed to run the T-SQL outputs, the T-SQL technology itself. It does not do that. So thus we see the differences here. We are not able to call user-defined aggregates because they cannot have any meaning from within the environment, which is in this case the Microsoft Access. Can you repeat the definition I given you now, please? Can you repeat that? Huh?
Microsoft Access for save the database.
Both of them, they save database because Access or SQL Server, both they are for database only. They are database management systems, both of them. But the difference is SQL Server is a professional one. It's dedicated to enhance the relational work and the relational aspects. SQL Server, Microsoft Access, it is to run on top of files only, in the sense of it is only to visualize, let's say, data stores deprived from the other parameters. Only SQL related tasks. It does relational activities, yes, but it is not for the purpose of professional work. It is based on use of files, briefly. So it is limited. It's a limited, we can say it's a limited edition. But both of them, they are database management systems. Both of them برامج قواعد بيانات. برامج ليس قواعد بيانات. برامج. Okay. تليفوني ما يفتح في نهاية. Actually it is from for sure it is from your end only, so I can't do anything here. I cannot do anything. For sure it is from your end. I wrote in capital, I'm sorry for that. But you have to check your device now. Because the students, they are listening
خلاص
to me.
مستر دخلت
اه
التليفون ثاني دخلت.
حليتيها المشكلة، أمورك طيبة. اوكي that's good. تم. So هذا دليل على أنه فعلا المشكلة في الجهاز، يعني مش good. Still talking about the enhancement. Actually, I insist on the question I asked you at the beginning of the class, the enhancement the SQL do presents to us. T-SQL is coming to us with enhancements, additions, added values. Yeah, true. Why? Because we are not dealing with only implementing databases, or we are not implementing projects on top of databases, on top of the use of databases. No, but we are presenting extra functionalities. When we say that we need to execute a list of queries sequentially without any interruption, and we have to guarantee that there will be no interruption, there will be no interference. Who will do that? The SQL queries only? No, the SQL, they are only commands. Command number 1, number 2, number 3, number n, and so on. Any interruption, any trial to interfere those queries, it would be successful. So the system will fail. Remember the example of the bank and the ATM machine. We need to check the ID, we need to check the balance, we need to receive the query, and we have to update the account. Those are 3 or 4 or 5 queries that they have to be either successful together, or they have to fail together. No trial to interfere them. So either together or not. So who is going to guarantee those queries to run together or to fail together? It's the T-SQL itself. It's the T-SQL itself. No, actually, it's not unique, but the T-SQL does that because the T-SQL is not. It's not a query. It's a sort of how to pass queries and how to make queries run and how to visualize the effect of the queries and so on like that. The architecture of the queries. So here we come to another enhancement. This is actually the role of the T-SQL only. So these an added value that the T-SQL presents to us. The concern of the types. In so many cases, actually, I tell you, actually, regarding when we talk about the lab, the practical session, and if you, and so many times, actually, I tell you that if you have a problem in just storing the data, put the data type to be a varchar. Let it be a textual representation, and the database engine will make it pass. Because a number can be seen as a varchar data type. A character can be seen, it is already a varchar. A symbol like the hash, the question mark, the exclamation, the dot, the comma, the semicolon, what are they? They can be seen as a varchar. Yes, the answer can be. Okay, the date, which is, for example, today is 22nd March 2021. This is a combination, alphanumerical. Can it be seen as a varchar? The answer is yes. Not only like that, we can write 22, the 22nd means 22, slash 321 means symbols and numbers. Can it be considered as varchar? The answer is yes. So thus we talk about the types only. Our concern here is the types. But the solution I given you now, the definition I given it to you now, if you are going to combine, convert everything to be a varchar, there are security concerns that we have to talk about. Why? Because if the system will accept everything, malware can be installed in our databases because we can pass scripts. We can pass a JavaScript block to the database. The database will accept that because in a form we can type text and number, for example, login, username and password, or a registration form. We have to type the username, the email, the number, the password, the mobile number. Those are the current values we may pass in a form. But can we pass a script, JavaScript or CSS style? The answer, we do not have to do. But can we, by changing all the fields types inside the database to be varchar, yes, we can insert script and styling blocks. Because what is a JavaScript? A script. It is a simple tag, less than, greater than, and indicating the name script. So symbols and letters. Symbols and letters. They are varchar, so they can be stored inside the database, which is not allowed. Which is not allowed. Let me write here something. Say here, whatever. I'm going to say href equal quotation, whatever. I'm going to just briefly, I'm going to just brief that just for explanation purposes. Here, it is a block of JavaScript that indicates document.href. Let's say get element by ID. maybe I'm gonna say here head. Okay, dot href. We are a document, whatever. We are just calling the href of an element just by click, something like that. Briefly, I mean, it's not correct, the statement, to direct it to some destination. If the type of the field inside the database is varchar, this field can be injected, and we discussed the injection at the beginning of this chapter only. We discussed the injection at the beginning of this chapter only. This is to be successful. This is to be successful if dt is varchar. Oh, remember this very well. Remember this very well. And the same thing actually if you talk about the style. Again, it's symbols less than, greater than, and characters. So if it is the field is a varchar, so it would be accepted. One. Let me. Okay, great. So any questions, please? Any questions, please? Because here we are discussing this entity is discussing the types. Why? Because the SQL Server is enhancing its own types, but they have to be respected for security measures, for our concern, for our view. Now we have to discuss them because we want to raise up the security to the max. We have to be secure in the environment as much as we can. Any concern here, please? Any questions here, please?
No, Mister.
That's great. That's great. That's great. So I'm gonna stop you. If you hear your name, please say yes.